Chapter 13, Gifted and Talented, is a lot more fun than a lot of the chapters we've had. I had a lot of fun doing it because there's some interesting things, and you'll sense some attitude from me, and I apologize for that if you disagree with my attitude, but I question the authors, which is politically incorrect to do. I question the authors of the textbook a little bit, but it's some fun stuff. It applies school-wide. It's probably ignored a lot, and for the most part, for a lot of us, it's a world unknown to us as gifted and talented, and so it's kind of a fun thing to do, but it's not talking about kids with severe disabilities like we've been. It's the other end, and it's a lot more fun. Chapter 13, Gifted and Talented. Gifted and Talented, Chapter 13. This is good. You need to look at these because it really hits on these. How is the dynamic and evolving definition? The author is going to make a big deal out of the definition here and all the different ones. Remember last one we didn't have good definitions in Chapter 12 of low incidence, and we've had good ones. This one you'll be bombarded by definitions. Why do students who are very capable need special education? They make a case for that, and politically makes a real case for gifted and talented. What provisions should and can be made to accurately identify students? They beat this pretty good identifying them. How can general ed classroom teachers provide curriculum? So in the absence of gifted programs, what can you do in the regular classroom? And it kind of comes down to including like others. What are some of the strategies for differentiating? That's kind of a new concept in education we haven't talked about yet, this tiered or differentiating. Should gifted students be educated with their same age peers in the education or in heterogeneous groups? And they do a thing in this chapter about ability grouping and really kind of knock that. And what should special education or gifted, or should special ed be, or for gifted and talented students be required? And you know my thing on federal law, let's get the feds involved and who knows what's going to happen. So that's it. And this is this teacher who is a gifted and talented one. It used to be all the teachers used to have, or all the schools had a gifted and talented person, but that's kind of went away with the different cuts. So our study for exceptional children thus far has focused on students with intellectual, behavior, and physical disabilities, and now we get on to the gifted ones. Jeannie has just completed her report on solar systems for class tomorrow. She looks out her bedroom window and wonders what might be happening in the countless planets that circle all over those stars. It's kind of funny because I think of my kids. Jackson would wonder if there's any geese flying by to shoot at or something like that. So I quickly realized my kids probably aren't in this category. But it gives you some scenarios here of these different ones. Here's a 9th grader, Malcolm. Please read these because it gives you an idea where we're going with this. 12-year-old Tony. And like any, they're identified early on. So here's the definitions. Intelligence, creativity, and talent have been central to various definitions of gifted and talented over the decades. Creativity is a big one, not just intelligence, creativity and talent. Terman, one of the pioneers in the field, defined gifted as those who score in the top 2% of standardized tests of intelligence. In 1967, Gulliford called for an identification of people with creative potential. So those are some buzzwords that you need to be familiar with. Whitty in 1951 described gifted and talented children as those whose performance is consistently remarkable in potentially valuable area. These three concepts continue to be reflected in the current still evolving, meaning we can't agree. When you see that word still evolving, it means we don't agree on what that is. So here's the feds first. And they really get the bottom line say out the feds. First Fed definition, gifted and talented students, was in 1972. Reported to Congress, Education of the Gifted, Commissioner of Education Sidney Marland, and went with this term: gifted and talented children means children, and whenever applicable, youth who are identified at the preschool, elementary, and secondary level as possessing demonstrated a potential high performance capability in such areas as intellectual, creative, I'm going to break these, and academic, specific, and leadership ability, are in the performing and visual arts. who reason thereof require services or activities not ordinarily, and that word is key, not ordinarily provided. Gifted and talented will encompass a minimum of 3 to 5% of school population. So remember, that's the feds. And I think the test tries to break this down on whose definition is what, and that's why you got to kind of hang on to this. Here's the feds. They're saying 3 to 5% intellectual, creative, specific academic or leadership ability in the performing and visual arts. Marlin's definition encompasses multiple forms of giftedness of this. In 93, Federal Report National Excellence Case of Developing or Talent had this. The word gifted was eliminated. The terms outstanding talent and exceptional talent were embraced. And potential was retained in the definition. Current Fed definition, first promulgated by Javits Education Act. And remember, we've talked about PL 94-142, where here's PL 100-297. And in here, this is your number one. I want you to tell me what this stands for, PL 100-297. And so we'll go here to this. And I'm going to put this number one here. Oops, sorry. Number one. PL 100. What was it again? 100. 297. You tell me what does PL stand for? 100 and 297 stand for. Okay, that's number one. As part of the Elementary and Secondary Ed Act, it included No Child Left Behind in 01, so that got stuck in there. Students, children, or youth who give evidence to high achievement capability in areas such as intellectual, creative, artistic, and leadership capability in specific academic fields, not ordinarily provided fully. And that definition is on the test, so you need to bring that with you, this Fed definition. And then we have these National Association for Gifted, the NAGC, NAGC. They have theirs, those who demonstrate outstanding leadership levels of aptitude. They like that word, defined as exceptional ability of person to and learn. Okay. Top 10% or rarer. One or more domains. Domain includes structured areas of activities such as symbol systems, math, music, and language in this. Development of ability or talented lifelong process. And there's a question on the test where about their thing is it's a lifelong process. So make a note of that. Exceptional performance in young children may be evident on the tests and other measures of ability or as exceptionally rapid rate of learning. Okay, and that was their distinguishing thing, that may be that. As children reach adolescence, achievement, high motivation, domain are often primarily. Then here's these other ones. This guy, Renzulli's three-trait definition, has this: above average general studies and abilities, high level of task commitment and creativity in this. And there's a question on the test about this, so you have to separate that one out. Okay, and then this one also, this Pareto's talent development, which has superior memory. This is his thing. Difference. Others don't talk about that at all. About memory. This one is Pareto's concept is this: superior memory, observation powers, curiosity, creativity, ability to learn school-related subject matters rapidly. Okay, so you see what I say there? We don't agree. We all kinds of different ones, different than any other one we've studied. There's a lot of things. It's a lot more complicated. So here's this Renzulli's thing. He has that description there. Then Maker also has this problem-solving perspective. This is Maker. His name is Maker. Maker's dynamic perspective incorporate three elements that appear most often within this. Here's his: high intelligence, high creativity, and excellent problem-solving skills. And I'm saying Maker, it's a him, it's a she. Okay. Then state by state, many states have now incorporated aspects of this federal into their definition of gifted and talented. Although the general intelligence element prevails across state definitions or giftedness, talented, different states feature other aspects of special abilities. Like specific academic abilities in 27 states. Visual and performing arts have 18 states. Creative thinking, 20 states. Unusual leadership capacity. So that each state gets put their own in. And 3 states have no official definition of gifted and talented. And now you are going to get to the help here. If you look at all these, you're going to find a website that talks about the definition, and you can Google that. Let's come back over here and look at these. Here's the feds, and you can use these, and this National Association of Gifted, levels of aptitude and competence in one or more domains. And I'm going to ask you to bring these in here. This will be your number 2, because I think that's important, is their definition. They had about 3 or 4 things. This is your number 2. And can you give me, this will be our number 3. A little bit about each of these. 1, 2, 3. Don't worry about Pareto's there, but you have to know that, and I say, isn't this interesting in the definitions? 1, 2, 3, 4 so far, 5, then 6, 7, 8. 8 different insights on this. So that's 3, and here's 4 makers, and that's okay. But here's what you get to do. You get to research this one, and this one. This will be your number 4. And I'll show you where that's at right here. Talks about this after makers. Right here is right here is a paragraph about it on page 458. Sternberg's, Gagne's, and Gardner's. And so you'll have to Google those and just have a brief input of each of those here. That's your number 4. All right, let's go back to this, the state-by-state definitions, and then your number 5 down here will be number 1, South Dakota. What is their definition from this website? And number 6, what are the 3 states that don't have a definition, an official definition? So that's your first 6 things there. Go do it, then come back. Okay, characteristics. And as you can imagine, they're all over the board also with these here. Now we'll highlight all those for you. Rapidly acquire, retain, and use large amounts of information. That word there makes it challenging. Large amounts. Okay. Relate one idea to another. In other words, think. And this is so interesting, and I see this in my kids, is that I can learn this, but I have a hard time relating it to anything. And we know in learning and how the brain works, that's the best way to learn stuff. You can make sound judgments. And to me, what's interesting about this, I think, very subjective process of what is a sound judgment versus not. Appreciate multiple and opposing points of view in their school days. For a lot of for the most part, I think that's not appreciated as opposing points of view. That for the most part, we think we all should agree. I know I get in some trouble with that, with opposing points of view. Perceive the operation of larger systems of knowledge that may be recognized, acquire and manipulate abstract symbol systems, and solve problems by reframing the question and creating novel solutions. So that's a pretty accepted one there. Let me flip over to this. And here those are here for you. The abstract system. So that's them. And so you want to hang on to those. All right. Some children have exceptional intellectual abilities found in one child in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000. And that seems high. Characteristics, and here they are. This intense intellectual curiosity. fascination with basic words and simple ideas, perfectionism and need for precision, learning with grades, murky intuitive leaps, intense need for mental stimulation and challenges, difficulty conforming and thinking of logic, early moral things. And again, that word moral is so interesting to me in this whole discussion. The tendency towards introversion, independence, and isolation. Isn't that interesting also? Toward introversion, independence, and isolation. Very interesting. Many gifted children have a highly developed sense of moral judgment. It's so subjective in this day and age that we can't begin to agree on that word. What is moral? What is accurately moral? So it's so interesting to me. Same with fair and compassion, empathy, others. Very, very mushy, soft words. It's just so interesting to me. As a result, teachers and parents may find themselves in heated discussions with gifted children over issues such as why adults litter or politicians want to cut aid programs for the elderly and poor, for example, throughout their observations on making the world a better place by young gifted students. So very, very interesting. Now, can I push on this a little bit? Gifted kids I knew, I didn't equate these topics, that them wanting to argue on these topics made them morally superior or have good moral judgment. I thought of it is it made them, they like to argue. I didn't see it as morally superior or fair or any of that. They just love to argue. Several of the kids I've known that are gifted kids knew they were intellectually superior, and one of the things to show it is to argue. So, sorry, I know that's not politically correct to disagree with the textbook, but I disagree. Many discussions on list characteristics portray gifted children as having only strengths and virtues, but no flaws. Very attributes of which we identify gifted children, however, can cause trip to multiple problems. Giftedness is not without costs. For example, strong verbal ability may be evident in gifted students who talk themselves out of troublesome situations or who dominate class discussions. High curiosity may give them the appearance of being aggressive or snoopy as they pursue interests and challenges. Educators need substantive preparation for gifted education. To avoid unrealistic positive stereotypes of gifted students, to avoid letting students' shortcomings be used and identified. So they're echoing here what I'm saying. They're echoing that they like to argue. They're saying this may give them this appearance, but it's really not their thing. Their thing is that they're, and that's a little hard for me. I'm sorry. That's a little unsettling to me to hear these things. Who do you think made these observations? Check your sections and correct answers at the end. I don't get that. So here, individual difference among gifted and talented. Let's go back to the characteristics here. This is that second group. High IQ standard 3 standard deviations or greater. Do you remember this from the beginning? We talked about this bell-shaped curve of IQs. That was a bad one. Here's the bell-shaped curve, and we said here average is 100, and one standard deviation is about 15 points between 85 and 115 is average, low average, high average. So 2 standard deviations out here would be 70. We said this is intellectually disabled. I was going to say MR, but I stopped. And then 2 standard deviations above would be about 130. And this, when we get 3 standard deviations below, severely disabled. And then we get here, and I've always thought this was the point, 145 here. I always thought it was 130. They're saying here it's 145. Intense intellectual curiosity, fascinated with words and ideas, perfectionism, need for precision, learning in great intuitive leaps, intense need for mental stimulation, difficulty in conforming to the thinking of others. And this is where I say this is the arguing part. I don't see it as the moral part. I see it that needing to argue. And no matter, because they won't bring it up. They want to challenge you. Early moral and existential concern. I say this, I don't get this, but I could be wrong. I was wrong on some other things. And tendency towards introversion. And the ones I knew, this would be correct. Okay, dimensions, and let me show you where the dimensions are. These here, this individual and intra-dividual differences, and I want you to make this, let's see, what number are we on here? 7. This is number 7. You're going to give a definition of these. Intra-dividual differences, and asynchrony. Can I try to do that? Asynchrony, or disparate rates of skill development. Disparate gave different rates. Okay, so you got those 3 things there, and same with these. Now here's number 8, is how these things, these dimensions fit into this also. Here's a little thing on profiles of 2 gifted and talented students, both age 10 and in 5th grade, on their different skill sets. Look at here, math, one is high, one is low. Here, social studies, this one's higher. Motor coordination is higher. This one's probably an athlete then. So that's interesting. Here's this asynchrony here, term used to describe disparate rates of intellectual, emotional, social, and physical growth. That's your definition for that. Maybe well above the average for their grade. That pattern of performance. Okay. And here's these things. Creativity. Some scholars and teachers believe that creative ability is central. Okay. I think that's on the test too. Creative ability is central to the definition of giftedness. Although we all profess to know creativity, when we see it, no universally accepted definition of creativity exists. And that's the problem, that we don't agree. We all think we know, we don't agree. So Gulliford had 2 times who studied the emergence of creativity, described the dimensions of this in this way. A divergent production in the structure of this model: fluency, flexibility, novelty, and originality. Move this over for you. Elaboration, synthesizing, analyzing, ability to reorganize and redefine, complexity. And in my opinion, this is complex, too complex. And that's why it gets dropped. Okay, very complex. Creativity is unique, or creativity is quite subjective. And that's what I've been whining about since the beginning. It's very subjective on exactly what this is, and heavily dependent on times, context, and culture. And I'm saying in schools that's a problem with coming up with a percentage, because it's different if you're in a school of 100 versus a school of 3,000. It's heavily dependent on times, context, and culture. Most creative individuals come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. Isn't that interesting? They tend to be resourceful students who find a way to use their imagination and lack of resources to think outside the box. And there's a question on the test about this, but what I think is interesting, I'd love to see this research from Gratham here in 2011 on his group of how they discovered that. How they discovered that. Now, again, I'm going to diverge here, and you're going to disagree, but one of the things is we've spent tons and tons more money in these disadvantaged schools to have enrichment programs. Tons more money identifying kids, trying to get them in these programs to justify the money. And so that's why I'd like to see Gratham, and ETL means a group of people, ETAL and all. I'd like to see that research. Then Clark and always suggests that the purpose of creativity is to recognize and bring forth that which is new, diverse, advanced, complex, and previously unknown to mankind. Experience life fuller, richer, and meaningful. And again, very, very subjective, very mushy words in there. Many gifted and talented individuals become scientists, physicians, inventors, and great artists and performers. And again, he doesn't cite research for that. One of the things you make a statement like that, I'd like to research. But the one of the kids I knew that was highly gifted couldn't function in life, couldn't get out of bed, became an addict and stuff. And the mother felt that big part of it was that he was so talented. School bored him and life bored him, and he couldn't get enough stimulation. And so that's why I would say kids in this range, at 145, can solve the problems in the world if they get out of bed in the morning, if they can get out of bed. And then after studying the characteristics of highly creative individuals in a variety of fields, material, which you saw his definition included these things. Each field has specific behaviors in childhood, predictive creativity, a development process in the emergence of talent occurs in various domains. An IQ score should be minimized in this. So that's interesting. And a subsumed and context view of children who are performing tasks rather than looking at their scores. And so that's kind of contrary to what we think, that we'd minimize the use of IQs. The relationship between IQ and creativity is debatable. That's what, that's been around a long time. His study here is 04, or 04. That's one of our argument against standardized tests, is that does it tell you creativity? Regardless, testing for creative potential is often invalid and unreliable. And that's why we go to more subjective, mushy things, with the exception of Torrance tests of creative thinking. Right? And of course, Torrance is the one that researched it and told us that. So that's very good. So it's just very interesting to me that Torrance, he has this test, and his research, that's what this means. His research says that is valid. Is it okay to push against these authors? I don't know ethically if you can disagree with authors of a textbook, but I'm just saying in research, Torrance comes up with this test, and his research says that this is a valid way to determine gifted and talented. It's also difficult to differentiate between talent and creativity. And would you agree with that? I would. Two different things. Creativity, perhaps because there may exist a continuum rather than as separate entities. If we examine the life of a highly talented individual, such as the famous Martha Graham, we see the relationship between creativity and talent. In this case, talent is the visual and performing arts. Graham's creativity was evident in her pioneering modern dance techniques and innovative methods for expression in the choreography of the dance. However, great talent as a dancer, even in elegant movements, was equally impressive and deserves notice. So it's hard, I think, to point out a person and equate it to the whole thing. Let's go back here. There was some things, and we're going to move on to the prevalence of it, as we have with every chapter. Giftedness were definitely defined solely on the basis of a superior cognitive ability, as evidenced by scores on a standardized test. Then theoretically, 2.3% of the general population would be gifted by virtue of IQ, a score 2 standard deviations or above the mean, roughly 130. And that's what I always was told. 130 and above was gifted, strictly on IQ. The same theoretical statistic approach predicts that about 1 in 1,000 people would be highly gifted by attaining an IQ score of 145. And I think that's on the test. You have to know that. And roughly 1 in 10,000, 160. Okay, 4 standard deviations. And again, I will say to you, people who disagree, that if you have 160 IQ, you will have a hard time functioning. The world will be moving way too slow. That's why they become introverted and shy away from people. Not only is intelligent testing theoretically thorny, inexact, and sometimes biased process. Okay, this is interesting, particularly when applied to children from culturally and linguistic different backgrounds on whom the tests were not normed. The concept of giftedness has long been expanded to encompass special talents and potential for intellectual creativity and superior performance. Some estimates of the prevalence of giftedness range as high as 10 to 15% of the total school-age population. Some estimates, okay, and again, the Gagne's, Roselli, Reese, all these people that had definitions contributed to that. And you know what happens? Let me tell you what these folks do is they look at everybody's estimate. Everybody has an estimate. Every one of these that have a definition, and then they put the numbers all together and they massage them and they come up with this number. 10 to 15%. And obviously, as you can see, very inexact of how many. Most federal reports relate legislation and related legislation have estimated the prevalence of gifted and talented only to be about 3 to 5% of the school population. And I think this is the one that's on the test, is 3 to 5%. The percentage of school-age students identified as gifted and talented varies widely from state to state. For instance, 6 states identified more than 10%, depending on your definition. And some the state population is gifted and talented, and 6 states only have 3%. So again, it depends on your definition, and I think how many you want to serve. A biannual survey conducted by the National Association of Gifted Children state directors showed the United States has approximately 3 million gifted and talented in their schools. Okay. Here's the one. Very mushy. So here's this historical background. Defining measuring intelligence. Very interesting how to do that. Let me just work from here. Binet and Simon developed means of separating groups of slow learners. Turnham translated these scales into English and redefined them. Progressive education movement had enrichment programs. Marlin Report needs of gifted and talented students, and the Jacob Javis Gifted and Talented Education Act. So I'm going to ask you to contribute to those. Let me show you. And it goes right here to make a statement about each of these. And an agenda, that's kind of a divisive word, but we'll leave it there. Provision of educational services to students identified as gifted and talented has a long but sporadic history. The first special ed services aimed at accommodating gifted and talented students was initiated in St. Louis in 1868. Involved a plan for flexible promotion. Around 1900, rapid advancement classes were established, and children who completed 2 years' worth of academic work in 1, or 3 worth of work in 2. This was considered acceleration. So that was acceleration agenda. Simply, you could do more, you could move faster. Multiple tracking options and advanced coursework were practiced, primarily intervention of states. So that's what acceleration is. Then progressive education of the 20s advocated enrichment. So here was a change. First acceleration, now enrichment, which involved more in-depth instruction and ability grouping as appropriate. There's that first term. It was from the 20s. And you know the progressive education movement was change, change, change. Government's the answer type of thing. One of the earliest enrichment programs for gifted children in the 20s, Cleveland, Ohio, publicly spirited women organized to promote special classes for gifted students. This Cleveland program still is the longest running continuous program of gifted children in the United States. Okay, in 1957, the Soviet launched what's known as Sputnik. If you remember that from Foundations class, it sent the United States into a tizzy. This event precipitated a questioning of the academic and scientific capabilities, and we got this National Defense Act of 1958 because of that. The Russians got a satellite into space before we did. They got theirs in 1957, and the first thing we assumed is it was the school's fault, education's fault. And so we came up with a new Defense Act, and everybody signed on. And it was this nationwide additional money for math, science, foreign language studies. And I never heard this before. I think that was added in there. I never saw that was math and science. I don't know. I think that's some author keyword here sticking that in. After a relatively brief period of interest, the needs of gifted and talented students were generally ignored until the publication of Marlin Report in 1972. In 1975, gifted and talented students were passed over for inclusion in this 94-142, and we talked about what that was. But they received recognition, a small amount of funding from Title 6C grants. 1982, the Office of Gifted and Talented in the U.S. Department of Education closed after being in existence for 6 years. So in 1982, that closed. They had an office for it. The next federal recognition came in this of Jacob Javis Gifted and Talented Act, again, as we had earlier. Act 1988, Javis provides federal support for demonstration programs, research center of this. It talks about the money the 7th Congress appropriated for the Act. Fiscal year 10 represents less than 2 cents of every $100 of federal money. And just realize that still is a disproportionate number because about the need is at the other end. Look what we spend on the other end. So this is what you get to do. You get to research these just from the textbook, these 4 right here. And this is number 9. Thank you. Go do that one. So how do we identify and assess these? And this is going to get even more mushy than some of the others. Most states and school districts rely on intelligence and achievement tests. And they're not going to like that. Some schools use both, just as cognitive disabilities exist in a continuum. So, too, does giftedness. The same applies to achievement tests, where students can be proficient at grade level and advanced. Many schools identify students as academically gifted when they score at or above the 93rd percentile. Again, the states get to decide. While not illegal, it is uninformative and disadvantageous to rely on one test or instrument to formally identify or label gifted students. There is too much room for error in doing so, such as missing students who do not test well, and ignoring or discounting test bias. A multidimensional, multi-model assessment approach collects information from a variety of sources like parents, teachers, psychologists, in a variety of ways, test interviews, performance, and more and accurate and talented. So here it says comprehensive and equitable assessments for identification of gifted and talent includes these things, and there's quite a list. Interesting. One is down here, peer nomination or self-nomination. And that's what I should have done. I should have nominated myself for gifted and talented. Equity-minded professionals in gifted education recommend a comprehensive and a proactive approach to identify students of this. Quantitative, and qualitative approaches should be part of this. Quantitative is numbers. Qualitative research is written scenarios. Qualitative is portfolios, interviews, observations. Educators can use observation to find students who are demonstrating characteristics and indicate giftedness. Very interesting. Observations can include checklists, rating scales, simple jot-down procedures, interview of peers, parents in this. Let's go back here and see what they say about it. Portfolios, teacher, parent, self, peer nomination. That's interesting to me. Extracurricular leisure activities, proficiency in state tests. And of course this text is saying that's taboo to totally weigh in on that. And then authentic performance of products. Let's see what that tells you about it. Mission continuous assessments. Parents can have input. Protocols, things like that. So multicultural assessments and identification. Very interesting. I make a case for this. 10 core attributes of giftedness across socioeconomic, ethnic, and racial groups. So again, you get to contribute here about all these. One of the most persistent and pervasive problems in education is underrepresentation of African Americans, Native Americans in gifted programs, advanced placements. For decades, reports and census studies have shown that these groups of culturally different students have consistently been underrepresented and gifted. This underrepresentation and great loss of gifts and talents stand for about 50% of Americans, African Americans, and 40% of Latinos, and about 30% of Native Americans. Bias inherent throughout the identification process from low rates of referrals due to educators' low expectations through the use of culturally biased tests and instruments are primarily to blame for the underrepresentation of students from different economic and backgrounds. Isn't that interesting? That's why there's not many, is because of the racist identification methods. I didn't know that. And they claim here is a great big long research saying that's what it is. Mostly it's because teachers have low expectations and culturally biased tests to determine. I thought we did all these other things to do it other than the tests. I don't know. Here's these core attributes of giftedness across these economic things. Youth and special ed have not had the extensive opportunities to develop such a broad pattern of gifts and talent. See, I don't get why we're doing this, because it went back and said it was just inherent, their ability to be morally superior, be a creative and stuff. I don't get how we come now and say it's racist because they haven't had ability to develop these things. Should be designed to find the special talent. Interesting. So now it's based on special talent. Subsequent educational service should focus on facilitating growth in this talent area. Current best practices for identifying gifted and talented students from different racial and cultural groups involve a multi-factored, multidimensional, and multimodal assessment process that meet these criteria. Goal inclusion rather than exclusion. Interesting. And why I think that's interesting is because often we want to limit, we want to have the best students. And I don't quite understand this here, because now we're saying no, it has to be inclusive for cultures, not just for the most talented. And to include rather than exclude. Could we do this and could we not? Can't we run these really enrichment and programs like this for everybody then? Rather than, why would we exclude anybody then? Can't we make this available to anybody that wants it? Can't we go back to simply self-nominating or parent nominating if you want these kids on these advanced programs? I don't quite know. Data should be gathered from multiple sources, providing both objective and subjective information. Yikes. Parent interviews, individual intelligence testings, performance of groups. These are a combination of formal and informal testing techniques. Teacher input, family this. Identification procedures should begin as early as possible. Unconventional and non-traditional measures involving arts and aesthetic expression, such as dance, music, creative writing, as well as nonverbal measures. Interesting, because Jackson is a marksman with a gun and very knowledgeable hunter and stuff. Would that fit under creative something? Could he be, that would be unconventional. I think he may be in this group. Information gathered during the screening and identification process should be used to help determine curriculum, programs, and services of what to do. Here's Maker again, developed a procedure called Discover, discovering strengths, capabilities, and others that educators have used to identify gifted students from different racial, cultural groups. So here is the one. Have goal of inclusion rather than exclusion from multiple sources combined for formal and informal tests to be used. Should begin as early as possible. Unconventional and non-traditional should be used. Information gathered during the identification process should be help determine curriculum, programs, and services. And that's all good. Other means are this Discover follows a series of 5 progressively more complex problems to solve here. And there's this Discover. And I think there's a question on the test about this Discover. And it goes into it here, how to do it. Maker says that other researchers report positive results using the Discover model to assess the problems solving abilities of students from African American, Navajo, Tohono, O'Donnell, and Mexican American groups, which will identify in the process closely resemble the culture characteristics from which they come. So what? Children identified by the process closely identified. There's interesting. Equitable percentage of children from various groups. See, I didn't know that was the thing. That's the first we talked about that it has to be equitable. And what I think on this, and again, I get in all kinds of trouble with this, but you're going to leave out some very deserving and gifted and talented kids in the name of being equitable. And maybe that's what's, I guess that's how things have changed, that that's more important than equitable that way than what's fair. But I think you're going to leave some kids out when you start trying to be equitable based on culture instead of ability. And then see the process is equally effective with boys and girls, and students identified through this process make gains equal or greater than those students who are identified of traditional standardized tests. So they're validating this process, saying that their gains are the same. Other means of identifying different gifted learners have been tried and found to be moderate success. And it has a bunch of these listed here and across the literature about culturally different students. The identification procedure must not contain merely IQ score. And again, because you're going to leave some culturally kids out. Rather, educationers must be multiplicative methods. More researchers realize that theories show that test scores and checklists themselves can be and have been harmful to students because they are scored and aggregated this way. Goals, history, all gifted and talented children come from a family with goals, history, and a background. Interesting, because we had earlier said that the highest percentage came from disadvantaged homes. Likely to a child to be identified as talented if she or she looks in the home and is read to regularly. This is true of bilingual children and monolingual children. And these are frowned on. And other promising alternative assessment methods have been resolved under representation, like Fraser's method, focus on talent characteristics, Mazzulli, these, and that's what it talks about here, some different ones. Multiple intelligence comes along here also. You don't have to do those. And then this on gifted and talented females, cultural barriers. Come along here. Conflicts concerning their role definition. And of course, stereotype of boys, we assume that they're not. And low-income gifted students need increased teacher expectations and careful interpretation of test results. And then this is interesting about disabilities. Here are few students low income are identified, and that's what I would do. I would take all these kids and put them in enrichment programs. That's what I thought was missing when I worked in low income school. I thought the kids all should have been in enrichment programs and let them have hands-on problem-solving things instead of trying to pick out the top ones. I thought if you really wanted to motivate these low-income kids, let them all be in enrichment programs. That's what I would do if I was ruler of the world. Have only 10% of students who are poor in the gifted program. Okay, and then gifted with disabilities. And that's very interesting also, that you wouldn't think of that somebody could be gifted that has a disability. I knew a kid that really had some problems in life that was dyslexic, that had an IQ of 138. And I remember once he found out that's what it was, that he was dyslexic, because he thought there was something wrong with him. In fact, he was really a goth-looking kid, and actually attempted suicide when this diagnosis was given that he was dyslexic, and really turned his life around, changed his life, because then it validated that he was super intelligent and he had this specific learning problem. Effective concerns of twice exceptional in second language include issues of this. Twice exceptional means they have a disability and giftedness. So, very interesting. I'm going to have you put that here. I don't know what number we're on. I think about number 9. Tell me, put that in here. What is twice exceptional? Means they're gifted and have a disability. The overall educational goal of gifted and talented students is the fullest possible development of every child demonstrating their abilities. Should be appropriate, challenging, academic rigor, relevance, be thematic and interdisciplinary, be responsive to and respectful of gifted students' learning characteristics and unique. Okay. Should be based on the fullest possible development of their actual potential abilities. Feelings. differentiating curriculum. And this is, I say, is a new thing. One is an acceleration and one is enrichment. Modify that pace. Other methods differentiating are this: curriculum compacting, compressing instruction content, or tiered extensions of the same basic lesson in groups of students with differing abilities. Let me take you back here. Those were there. Here's that differentiated. Recognize that meets the needs of students. Here's curriculum differentiation. Is a broad term referring to the need to tailor teaching environments to what's needed. The reality that gifted learners differ in meaningful ways is the guiding premise of differentiation. The main objective is to engage learner in the instruction through different learning modalities, appealing to differing interests. Use variety instruction in this. And again, I say, if I'm ruler of the world, especially in my low-income schools, they all get differentiated instruction because I base it on what is their interests and learning modalities. And what we want to do, of course, is have a one-size-fits-all. We want to go in that classroom and present one box lesson and everybody gets it. And then we'd pick out those top ones and say, oh, and you can access this and create this other ways. And I would create it for everybody. But that's, I don't want to start anything here. I don't want to start a big war over this. Meaningful curriculum differentiation for gifted and talented requires that educators recognize the individual strengths of learners and acknowledge inadequacy of regular curriculum to meet these needs. And the same with kids with learning disabilities, and the same from kids with culturally diverse backgrounds. I don't get why this is gets held up as this whole different level of teaching. Developed a planning tool she calls the equalizer. Equalizer reminds teachers that they can tailor any lesson to provide a motivating challenge best suited for gifted learners' interests, abilities, and emerging skills. Looks like this, the equalizer. So we have acceleration, and we have enrichment, and I say you want to modify the pace which you go, or you investigate deeper in a topic. That's what enrichment is. And then accelerate or enrich, which to do which one. And that's all good reading. Here's this other one's a curriculum compacting, pressing instruction, the tiered lessons. Provides different extensions of the same lesson. For example, after the whole class is exposed to basic lesson and poem, 3 groups of students might work to follow up activities and assignment, basic, middle, and high difficulty. 13.5 shows example tiered lesson for riddles. Where's 13.5 at? That depending on which tier you're at, you would have different challenges in it. Here's what everybody does. Here's what medium ones do in addition to basic. Everybody does basic. And then if you're challenged, you do medium and basic. And then if you're challenged, you're the high group, then you do all 3 of those for that same grade. Different abilities. Bloom's taxonomy that requires students to demonstrate different types of knowledge. Remember Bloom's? How Bloom's works here? Let me see if I can go back and find Bloom here. Bloom colleagues formulated a taxonomy of educational objectives that's proven very useful for differentiating curriculum. Original Bloom's contains 6 levels or types of cognitive understanding: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Let me see that. I'm going to ask you to bring that in here. I think this is number 10 here under Bloom's. Put those in here. So here's what number 10 is going to be right here, and I want you to push this down, of course, but I want you to make 2 columns from here, and that is right here is like knowledge is to remember. understand, a comprehension is to understand, and it gives you a much better look at it here, up farther. Let's see, right here. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. And you have to line them up with Bloom's words on 2 columns here. So you have that. Okay? And then we'll talk this curriculum differentiation outside the classroom, like interns and mentorships. And I'm going to ask you to make this was number 10, and this one number 11, I believe. And then you're going to give some definition for each of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Okay. And let's just they're right here, internships and mentorships, and that you kind of can see what that is. Here's special courses. All ways to have these creative things, summer programs, international experiences. You tell about each of those. Then here's the school-wide, interesting, a school-wide enrichment program. Very interesting. Focus on applying know-how to gifted throughout the whole school improvement, and that's what I'm advocating for, which many different types of enrichment services are made available to everybody. And this is from a crabby old dad who I think kids don't get enough of this in school, especially Jackson. And then Maker's active problem-solving model, role of the teacher is to facilitate high achievement by making curriculum modifications. And then problem-based learning. We're starting to see this more in school, is the problem-based. Work cooperatively in groups to seek solutions to real-world problems and apply what they know to that. And then this is interesting. They take off again on this ability grouping here. Educational placement alternatives to ability grouping. Ability grouping has been in schools both formally and informally for more than 100 years. And you don't remember this, it didn't happen to you, but to me, you were in the red bird or the blue bird, and I know we were in different reading groups. You got called up based on your reading level. Number of students in any classroom or school became large. The differences in their abilities to learn stood out. Teachers automatically place students in groups of subject matter instruction. Informal, consisting of 2 or more students who keep pace with each other. And that's just why we did it, to make it better for everybody. Generated considerable debate and among opinions over the years the extent to which gifted and talented students should be taught in these homogeneous groups composed to intellectuals. Okay, social injustices. Ooh, I don't like that word. And upheavals from resulted in increased calls for equity in all society's institutions. For some, equity in education includes the idea that all students should be taught in heterogeneous, meaning different, not this ability. So no single group can progress faster than any others. Think of that. So you want to, the reason we wouldn't do it, so nobody can progress. Everybody has to stay at the same rate. By virtually all education researchers in the field of gifted education believe that flexible heterogeneous grouping that does not result in tracking helps students reach their full potential. States that grouping gifted children in one of the foundations of exemplary gifted practices contends that many myths surrounding the ability grouping for gifted students, that it damages self-esteem of struggling students. Creates this elitist group who think too highly of themselves. Interesting. It is undemocratic and even racist. I didn't know that. That just, I don't know. It's just hard for me to agree with that. You never disagree with the textbook, but I disagree. That we're doing this because nobody can progress faster than others. You create racists doing this. Full-time, part-time gifted educational program. So, gifted education practice, special schools, classrooms. All curriculum instruction could focus on the needs of high-quality students. Programs for gifted students often must deal with stigma of being viewed as elitists. The top 5 to 8 gifted students in a given grade level are placed as a small general classroom. Okay. So special schools, you could have special schools or special classrooms for gifted, or cluster ability grouping the top 5 or 8 given a grade level or placed in a group as a regular classroom to mixed ability students. Part-time are pull-out programs just like we have in special ed, or cluster performance groups, like ability cooperative learning groups, all those different ones, and they're here for you. Like ability is 3 to 4 of the group together, or you can have this consulting teacher, special training. Basically, have specialists and have general ed classrooms that are responsible for this differentiating. So here's the continuing challenges. Only a small percentage of gifted and talented children enjoy a differentiated curriculum instruction. And what I think we're going to see, and you'll be part of this, is that you'll be asked to do this on a regular basis in your classroom, and that is create this tiered learning. And that's how you'll challenge all the kids that want to be in this gifted program and really open it up for more to have that enrichment. Children from culturally and linguistic different backgrounds and those who live in poverty, access to high quality differentiated is rare. And this is what I say, this is how I think it'll change for the better, is you'll bring this into every classroom of these tiers. No Child Left Behind Act may not serve gifted and talented students adequately. They are often neglected in the focus to bring up the lowest achieving schools or students. And I've ranted is the middle ones are the ones I think get neglected. Instilling a recognition by society in general and in policymakers in particular the need for design instruction for gifted and talented, and I think we need to recognize them and push them. That's who I think has suffered in our schools is these kids that fall like this. Identify, fund, and serve gifted and talented children as youth is yet to be achieved, and I think it comes up here. Okay, let me go back and see what the textbook talks about. Here's these different models. Here's these challenges of this. Okay. Gifted and Talented, Chapter 13.